Today we're going to talk about two new rhetorical literacies that we're going to add to our tool belt, our arsenal of tools, and that is iconography and form. Iconography and form are both forms of visual rhetoric. So far, we've worked with traditional rhetoric in ethos, pathos, logos. We've worked with multimodal rhetoric, with audience, context, purpose. Now we're moving into visual rhetoric. And so this is with iconography, form, and what we'll learn about later, semiotics. So what we're doing now is we're starting to learn visual literacy, right? We've talked about these ideas of literacy. Now we're trying to become visually literate. So we're trying to basically look for deeper meaning in the visuals, right? In what we see. And so we use these two theories of iconography and form to do that. So this is where we're getting into the idea of art history. And we use art history because they were basically the first ones to start painting and to start adding meaning, deeper meaning into visuals, right? Things that we see. So we don't just look at things at face value and say, that's a painting of a tree. It's meant to represent a tree and that's it, right? We're looking deeper for meaning, right? So this is what iconography and form are trying to get us to do. Our readings really focus on looking at medieval paintings and Renaissance paintings and things like that. That's fine, but don't take that at face value either, right? Make that, expand your mind a little bit and think about, rather than just looking at this Renaissance painting and using this theory to apply to Renaissance painting, we can use that same theory to apply to any multimodal text that exists today, right? It still holds up. It's a very old theory that holds up to modern texts. So what I want you thinking about is not just thinking about Renaissance paintings and, why they put their feet in this position and why they had a window open and why there's a cross up in the right corner, something like that, right? Use these theories to think about modern text, music videos or digital posters that you see somewhere, or still paintings today. So basically these chapters focus on two main guys, right? Erwin Panofsky and Roger Fry. Erwin Panofsky is the guy who created the theory of iconography or iconology, right? I'm gonna refer to it in both ways. It's kind of a synonym. There's little differences in them, but iconography is the way that I call it. And Roger Fry is the guy who created form. Basically, every modern multimodal text today uses iconography and form, and it's kind of our job to find it and to figure it out, right? The idea behind iconography and form, both of them are to find deeper meaning in a visual text. Basically, we're trying to crack the code that the author put together when he or she were creating this piece of text. They're putting meaning into it in a way that forces us to think deeper about it and analyze it so that we can get deeper meaning. Sometimes the author may put a specific meaning into it. He may leave it open to interpretation so that you can get a lot of different meanings from this text. Iconography allows us to crack the code in one way, and form allows us to crack the code in another way. You can think about it as iconography being the what, right? The content of what the author is trying to say, the message that they're trying to say, right? That's the iconography. And form is more in the how, right? So making meaning from a digital text or a multimodal text in how it was created, right? So you're looking for the emotion and the imagination from the author, but more in how it was created, right? Rather than what it is saying, it's how it was created, right? So iconography is what it is saying, it's the content. We're trying to find the message. And form, we're trying to figure out how it was put together and create meaning about how it was created. They each give us their ways of finding deeper meaning, right? In Panofsky, he gives us these 3-level system, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Fry gives us 5 different design elements to look for. The reason that we have both of these things was because, art evolved, right? It moved on from just a painting of a tree or just a painting of a couple getting married or just a painting of a self-portrait of somebody, right? It moved into more modern art where we don't actually see a physical thing on canvas, right? We just have to feel the emotion and figure out what the author is trying to say based off of, random streaks or a giant black square or whatever it is, right? These Jackson Pollock sort of things. Basically, we started off with iconography because people wanted to paint things that they saw, physical representations of things that they saw, but people started getting bored by just looking at, a wagon in a stream with a tree hanging over it. There's not a lot of deeper meaning behind that. So then painters and artists started painting similar style pictures, but adding in little cues and little tiny things to find deeper meaning. This is kind of where semiotics comes in, but we're not going to get to that just yet. We're going to get to that in another video. We'll talk about semiotics. But iconography is the idea of finding deeper meaning from a visual with some sort of physical representation of real life. Form is finding deeper meaning in a visual text that doesn't have some sort of physical representation. So rather than trying to figure out what it is saying, you try to figure out how it was put together and the emotions of the author and the artist based off of what you see, right? So it's two different ways of visually analyzing something. The readings that we had for this week on iconography and form mentioned the artist and the viewer a lot as our two different sort of positions, artist and viewer. We can think of them, the artist being the author, the designer, the writer, the composer, whatever it is, and the viewer, they're going to be the consumer or the audience. Iconography and form, these are difficult readings, and it does seem like it's kind of confusing, but it's really not. I'm going to try to put it in a much simpler way for you. So let's start with iconography. Erwin Panofsky gave us the theory of iconography. He gave us a 3-level system to find deeper meaning in a visual text. He's given us 3 levels: first level, second level, and third level. First level he calls the primary level, the natural level. This is the most basic level. So we can think about it as like in a video game, right? We start on the first level. The first level is the easiest, easy to get through. Then we're going to move on to the second level, and it's going to get more difficult. And the third level is going to be the most difficult. So on the first level, the natural level, what you see is what you get, right? So if you see a picture of a tree on the primary level, you see the tree, you see a bird, you see leaves, you see a little boy under the tree, you see grass, you see sky, right? It's just kind of identifying. You point, right? There's sky, there's tree, there's a bird, there's a ball, there's a boy, there's a stick, whatever it might be, right? That's the first level. You're just kind of identifying what you see in the visual. For your blog post, I'm going to expect you to go through all 3 levels. Here is where we try to start finding deeper meaning in some of the individual elements of that whole text. In order to find deeper meaning, though, in the second level, this is where we need to have some sort of shared expectations or shared beliefs or shared knowledge with our audience, sort of shared cultural literacy or shared historical literacy or shared social literacy. So when the author places a cross in a painting from the Renaissance period, we have historical context that a cross is really important during that time. And because of that historical context and that historical literacy that we have, we know that the cross is going to represent Jesus and religion, right? Rather than just something like this. In the first level, we see this, and we just see 2 pieces of wood. At the second level, this now turns into a symbol. Because we have the shared religious history, we know that these 2 pieces of wood have a deeper meaning in representing Jesus or God or religion. So in the second level, we need to find specific elements, basically the things that we identified in the first level. Now we're going to try to attach deeper meaning to each of those individual elements based off of our shared literacies. I probably have a different set of shared literacy than you guys do because I am older and I'm American and I've been around longer, right? You guys will have a different set of literacies than I do because you are younger and you're Kazakh and you've been around in a different situation. So we still probably have shared literacies because both of us know that this represents religion, right? In some sense, we will know that when we see a beam of light coming down onto somebody, right, that also has its own religious deeper meaning to it, right? That God is watching that person or something like that. I don't know why I got religion stuck in my head right now. I'm not a religious guy at all. But this is what you do in the second level. You look for little tiny individual elements all around your screen, whatever it is, whatever you're watching a music video, you're looking at a painting from the Renaissance period, right? And you're finding something that you think has a deeper meaning that could be a symbol or an icon, right? And you're attaching deeper meaning to that individual element. In the second level, those things that you identified, you attach deeper meaning to each of them individually. Now, when we move to the third level, the intrinsic level, meaning it's the overall whole idea of that author, of the artist. So that third level is where you look at all those individual elements that you found, and you look at all the deeper meanings that they have, and you try to combine them to figure out what is the overall idea or the overall message that the author is trying to give us as his audience. That's iconography in its most basics. You got 3 levels: primary level, secondary level, intrinsic level. Primary level, identify different things that you see. Secondary level, attach deeper meaning to those different things that you see. And the intrinsic level, combine all of those things that you identified and all those deeper meanings that you've put together, combine them and tell us what the author is trying to tell us. What is the overall moral or the overall message that the author is trying to get to us. Analyzing the content of the video, the things that the author purposely put on the screen to show you, iconography. Now we move to form. Remember, form is analyzing how the author put these things together and what's the deeper meaning and how he arranged the way that he did it, right? So form is much more focused on design, right? And we're going to learn about design. I keep coming back to these ideas of design. We have to learn these theories first so that when we get into design, we understand it a lot more. So we have a little bit about design that we got from Writer Designer Chapter 2 about the ideas of contrast and emphasis and color and things like that. So those ideas still play a little bit in the ideas of form, right? Roger Fry gave us 5 defining elements to look for in form. Rhythm of line, mass, space, light and shade, as well as color. So here's where we look at a music video. We think to ourselves, why did the author put this scene of the music video in black and white? Why is only this scene in black and white and everything else is in color? So he designed it that way. He's using light and shade and color to send some sort of deeper meaning, to send some sort of deeper message. That's what form is looking at how the author put things together. If you see a repetition of black and white lines across somebody, right? That's rhythm of line and that's shading as well. Why is the author putting black and white lines next to each other? Does black represent something to him? Does white represent something to him? What is it, right? Why did he choose black and white instead of green and red? So looking at color and looking at the deeper meanings of color, you can look these up. You don't have to have shared cultural meanings of color, but you can look them up. Green means, money or life or, earth or, being green, right? This idea of being green is saving our earth, right? So it's just a color, but how can you be a color? This is the idea of analyzing color. So this is where form takes over. It's just how things were put together. Like I said in the beginning, every good multimodal text, you should be able to analyze it for iconography and form. Form and iconography go hand in hand, especially with modern multimodal text, right? When you go back to the ideas of modern paintings like Jackson Pollock, it's really hard to analyze iconography, right? Because it's all form, it's all design. There's not some physical content that you can analyze. A good multimodal text that you should choose for your blog post, you should be able to analyze the content on the screen, whatever the author, the artist, the creator has given to you. And you should still be able to analyze how they have put it together. What design elements have they chosen purposefully, and what is the meaning behind these certain design choices they make? So that's most basically the easiest way that I can describe iconography and form. Iconography focuses on the what and the content. Form focuses on the how and the design. So I'm going to end this video here, just as a sort of the lecture part of this is my explanation of it, because I know both of these readings are long and they're both fairly difficult to understand. They do give you some really good examples of how to analyze for iconography. For example, the Beatles example at the end of the iconography chapter is a great example, because the Beatles on that piece of artwork, the album artwork, they purposely put a lot of little different clues to sort of make their audience interpret it in different ways, right? Like, why is Paul the only one not wearing shoes? And why on the Beetle does it give a message about Paul is dead? So they put a lot of different little things, right? So it's easy to analyze that. On the first level, you see 4 men crossing a street with some cars in the background and some buildings and a road and a crosswalk. At the second level, then you start seeing, one of the men is barefoot. Why is the man barefoot? What does that mean, right? Could be more closer to the ground, more of a religious thing. You're buried with your shoes off, things like that, right? So there's deeper meaning behind it. Why is one of the license plates saying this? What is that supposed to mean? Why are they all in a procession, right? Like a funeral sort of thing. They're all left foot first, except for the one who's dead is in the right foot first. And why is, he second in line instead of being third in line, right? So you're analyzing the individual elements. And then at that third level, you get this great sort of thing is like, the Beatles are trying to tell us that Paul died. Paul McCartney died a long time ago, and he isn't a part of this album. It's their last album, or one of their last albums, right? But now he's no longer alive. And the Beatles are trying to hint to it because they can't tell you in person because they covered it up. Like, big media covered it up, and it's a big conspiracy. That's wonderful. That's great analysis right there. You're digging deep into it, and you're trying to find deeper meaning. The one thing that I'm going to end this video on, though, is beware of over-interpretation. Right? This is definitely a real thing, and this is how we end up with conspiracy theories. Over-interpretation of something that probably doesn't have that much meaning can lead you down a crazy path that you'll end up in exploding, right? Beware of over-interpretation. I don't mind if you over-interpret, because it shows me that you really understand and you're thinking really deeply about your multimodal text, right? For the purpose of life and taking these skills outside of my class and looking for deeper meaning in everything that you see around you, beware of overinterpretation.